Dan Lanning officially says he has zero interest in leaving Oregon, which comes as a surprise, maybe to some people, but not me.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it's that time once again for Locked On Ducks. Happy Halloween. I'm your host, Sid from Toy Story. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Matayo Uiagalelei, we'll talk about him. Are we looking for more from Oregon stud defensive end? I'll talk about that later on the show. Makai Hughes, some thoughts there on the running backs on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Like Oregon's players, they sweat every detail at Mazda because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And guess what? You will not see these toys again. They are mine and mine alone. That joke is probably landing better for the YouTube audience, but that's okay. So, Dan Lanning came out officially, was on the Rich Eisen show, and was asked about the evolving landscape of college athletics and says, I have zero interest in leaving Oregon. That's what he said. You can go watch the whole segment, but that's the quote that most people heard. This didn't surprise me a single bit. And I saw this debate running in the comment section on my show yesterday. And it was about whether or not Oregon is a better job in college football than LSU. And the answer is no, it isn't. LSU is a better job than Oregon. That is just a fair and honest way of looking at it. That doesn't mean that leaving Oregon for LSU is a good professional decision. Because what you have to think about when you describe this job as being better than that job, or this job is better than that one, what does the timeline look like? The timeline for Oregon, the window to go out, compete for, and win a national championship is right now. Do I feel like they'll have a better shot next year? More on that in a little bit. But yes, I've said that coming into the season. Still, I expected Oregon to be a playoff team all offseason. I still expect Oregon to be a playoff team. And once you get in there, hey, who knows what could happen? You don't know until you have an opportunity. So Oregon is in the window right now. And we know that Oregon, for a number of reasons, is a top-tier job in all of college football. And Dan Lanning pretty quickly got things going. He wasn't taking over a complete and total disaster, but he's elevated what Mario Cristobal left him. That much is clear in a number of different areas. Recruiting, overall talent, the way the team plays. Like, I think in every respect, Dan Lanning is better than Mario Cristobal. I don't think Cristobal is terrible. I know a lot of Oregon fans want me to say that. I'm not going to, because he wasn't. He isn't at Miami. He has shortcomings that makes me like Dan Lanning a heck of a lot more. But so Oregon's championship window is now. Even if you go, and it's not just this season or just next season, but he's gotten to the point where Oregon's going to be in that conversation year in and year out. Even if he goes to LSU, which is a premier job, some would say the best job in college football. I think if everything's going right, Florida would have to be the top job. Texas, maybe Florida, Texas, LSU, Georgia, those jobs are all premier, no doubt about it. Oregon is not so far away from LSU, though, to where the step up that he would hypothetically make to go and be the Tigers head coach is big enough to abandon what he has built and what he has planned for the future at Oregon. That's where I think the calculation came down to for Dan Lanning. And it's why on Monday's show, I said I wasn't nervous about it at all. I've been completely sanguine about it all week. And sure, others kind of, I don't know if stoked the flames is the right term, but the speculation or discussion about would he do this, would he do that, I never felt nervous about it whatsoever because he is in a good situation. He's making over $10 million a year. He's got all the resources in the world he could possibly want. Now, the biggest reason, I should have mentioned this earlier, but the biggest reason that if you're looking at jobs objectively, you'd say that LSU is a better job than Oregon is the high school recruiting talent. The amount of recruits in the state of Louisiana and down in the South generally, it is easier because you don't have to go as far, and LSU has such a strong brand out there. And Oregon, of course, has a premier recruiting brand out on the West Coast. And California is a really great place to go recruiting. But down in the South, there are a lot of great players. You're right next to the state of Texas. You're right next to Georgia, Alabama. You're not that far from Florida. Like, LSU can recruit as well as anybody they brought in the top transfer portal class this offseason. So as long as the administration and the finances are right, then yeah, LSU is one of the top 2 or 3 jobs in all of college football. But Oregon isn't outside the top 10. So if you have everything that you need with the work you've done over the last several seasons to build up the recruiting expectations and potential for Oregon on the high school level, which is, I think, the biggest comparison between LSU and Oregon that would go in LSU's favor when comparing those jobs, then I don't think that there's a major advantage for Lanning to go and have to start over. He's got to find new coordinators. Well, Lanning has hired very well. We've seen that over the last few years, but you have to go and find new coordinators. Does everybody bat 1,000 with their coordinator hires? Not typically. Maybe Lanning would. We know he's really good. He's got the Rolodex and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this didn't surprise me in the slightest. And so going back to what I mentioned earlier about what Lanning's building going forward, a Locked On Ducks insight out there sent me this take for Spencer's scale of agreement. SSA for you. Next year's season is going to be something special. The schedule looks rough, but Lanning is creating a monster. We're so close. Well, can we define something special? Because, I mean, we're all waiting for the one truly different and special season, right? So if you're talking about that one, yeah, I think Oregon will be in the national championship picture next year. It's hard to see with how Oregon has recruited and retained talent and also supplemented with portal pieces over the last couple cycles. It's hard to see how they aren't going to be the national championship picture for the next couple of seasons, at least 2026. Now, you have to have some things go well in the offseason. Overall, I'm going to give this one an 8. Like, I think next year's team has a chance to be the best one that Oregon has had. Presuming you do 2 things. Going into the offseason, I know this season still has got a long way to go, but it's bye week, so just forgive me for looking a little bit further ahead than I normally would at this point in the year. If Dante Moore comes back and you shore up a couple of spots on the offensive line, getting Poncho back would be so big, that's going to be really hard to do. But if those 2 things happen, you have got foundational spots at leadership positions with experienced guys that we know are NFL caliber. And there are a number of other questions you'd have. Would guys like Matayo Uiagalelei come back? Or would Dylan Thieneman come back on the defensive side of the ball? How do they rebuild the offensive line? What does that look like? So there are some areas where I have no questions. Running back, receiver, I mean, really defensive line outside of Mateo. I mean, heck, Tatum Tuioti might be playing himself into being an NFL draft pick right now. Amari Washington could do the same. Okay, so defensive line has a few questions. But, running back or receiver, you look at what Oregon has, don't have any major concerns. In the secondary, I don't have any major concerns. There are going to be questions. There aren't going to be that many concerns on my end there. So that team, combined with the fact you're bringing in another top 10 recruiting class in 2026, that we'll see how many guys are able to contribute as true freshmen. But I mean, Jet Washington could be a special player at safety. Kendre Harrison at tight end could be replacing Kenyon Sadiq, but he might be the kind of guy, potential 2-way player for Dana Altman's Ducks as well. He could be the kind of guy that comes in and makes an immediate impact as a true freshman. Like, when you combine the talent Oregon will have come back, guys like Brandon Finney or Aaron Flowers that literally can, or Ifeoma Badegwu, all 3 of those guys, 3 of Oregon's 5 primary defensive backs, they all have to come back next year. And will they transfer out? I don't know why they would. Oregon is yet to have, I hesitate to say this because I know the announcers jinx is a thing, but Lanning has often said, understandably so, because it is, I think, a real point of pride for him, and it's something that is not common across the college football landscape. He's yet to have a starting player transfer away from the program since he took over. I don't know why that would start with any of those guys. I'm sure Oregon's NIL collective and the rev share and all that and how that gets worked out, I'm sure they also see the value of Brandon Finney and Aaron Flowers and Ifeoma Badegwu. And I'm sure they'll try to convince other guys to not go to the NFL draft. That can be a more difficult proposition because I think if you had to have one guy back, as much as I love Derek Harmon, that could have stayed for another year, the answer would be Josh Connerly. I think Isaiah World's been fine, but Josh Connerly was elite. So I think that for Oregon, Dan Lanning has realized what he's done at Oregon, what he can continue to do. And yes, LSU is a premier job, but the gap just isn't so big that it's worth it to just say, all right, forget all that. Let's go start over again. He realizes what he has. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. One of you asked me a very direct question. Where has Matayo been? First, this episode brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward wasn't one moment, a collection of moments that turned into one moment in the box score, and that was Oregon's 99-yard touchdown drive last week that got highlighted, of course, on Ducks versus them against Wisconsin, because that drive that got them on the scoreboard, yep, first quarter of offense when the weather was nice, wasn't any good. But all of a sudden, when Oregon had to have success on the ground or else they weren't going to score any points, they were able to do that. And Jordan Davison has been that guy. And De'Aaron Hill's been great. And Noah Whittington was awesome. Those three backs have just been so darn good. And they were a big part, of course, especially Davison, of that 99-yard touchdown drive. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Let's be honest. Most of us can't name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they are worth. You've got 401ks, savings, and investments. It's really easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That isn't what you want to do. That's why you want to start using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. So if you've had that one financial goal that's been lingering, you want to get to a certain point in your savings, you want to save up enough to make a purchase, maybe it's a car, a house, anything like that, Monarch is here to help you get there and reach your financial goals. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. That's monarch.com. Check them out at monarch.com. That Spencer guy needs second segment sips. So do I. Sid from Toy Story, hosting here on Halloween. And before I get to the second segment, Halloween and Oregon football is such a positive affiliation for me because I go back to 2009. One of my favorite nights ever, football related or otherwise, frankly, as a kid. It was Halloween. I was not at the game, but I remember going out trick-or-treating with my friends, coming back, and we were doing a candy exchange in my basement, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 of us, and we were just trading candy, eating candy, and watching Oregon run USC out of Autzen Stadium. That, let me tell you, that was a good time. A good time. I bet many of you have fond memories of that as well. Drop yours in the comments below. Let's talk about Matayo Uiagalelei. So, I was asking my Locked On Ducks insiders the other day, hey, what's on your mind right now? What's on your mind? One of you sent this one in. Where's Matayo been? Well, admittedly, Matayo has not to this point had the season that I expected him to or that I believe he's capable of. I do not want that to get misconstrued and lead you to believe that Matayo Uiagalelei hasn't been good for Oregon this year. By any metric, he has. So he leads the team with 4 sacks. Now, a couple of those came early on, so if you want to discount that, okay. He is second on the team, tied for second with 3 quarterback hurries. He also has 3 pass deflections and has 1 other tackle for loss on the year. Now, his tackle numbers aren't that big. His sack numbers are not as big as I would like them to be. His Pro Football Focus grade has him as a good above average player. His pass rush grade is pushing 82. His overall grade is around 79. I think that reflects what I've seen from him this year. He's done a lot more than just the numbers that he has put up, and this can happen more with interior defensive linemen sometimes, but with frankly anyone up front, the impact isn't always felt in the box score. Now, Matayo is a guy who should be able to light up the box score. If he doesn't, go on a tear and reach the total of sacks he had last year, which was 10.5, yeah, I'd say that's at some level a disappointment. I don't, again, want that to get turned into, he's not actually any good. Maybe it'll turn into him coming back for a fourth year so that he can up his NFL draft stock. If you want a silver lining element to all of this. The only thing, when I watch him on film and go through all this information in preparation for the segment, the only thing that is missing is the sack total. Now, that's the number one thing that you want to see from him this year, sure. But he's doing everything else well, and he does a lot more in the run game this year, I think, than he did a season ago, which he said at Big Ten Media Days was something that he wanted to work on, was to be better in the ground game and to not get moved around quite as much. And so at this point, I feel like he's done that. But now, for him, it's about becoming the whole package. And I think that he's still capable of doing it. But coming down the stretch, yeah, you'd love to see him really get going and have quarterback sacks more often than he has to this point. And of course, we know he's capable of doing that. And it's not as if there's some question, can he do it in the Big Ten? No, he's the Big Ten leader in sacks in the regular season a year ago. It's not as if he can't. He's been close a number of times, but I think the number one area he's got to improve, he's got to be able to finish better. His pass rush moves are so refined compared to a lot of guys, and he has a couple of good ones. He has kind of that hop step, and like his bend is, I'd say, solid. It's not, I don't think it's poor. It's definitely not elite, Kayvon Thibodeau level coming around the edge, but he's got the hop step. He's got the spin. He uses his hands pretty well. I think that he's been good. Like, he's been a good player. I was hoping this year he'd be a great or shoo-in for an all-conference selection. He's not playing like that right now, but there are 4 games left in the regular season, and he's got a chance to change that narrative a little bit. So, yeah, I think his draft stock has either leveled off or maybe even dropped compared to where it was coming into the season with how the first 8 games have gone. But that's not to say that he's been bad or that he needs to be replaced. No, if you're asking me to put Oregon's 4 best defensive linemen on the field, my prediction before the year has been what the coaching staff has put out there for the first unit or the most snapped unit and the most snapped guys, and I wouldn't change that. Bear, Amari, Tatum, Matayo. So, yeah, where's Matayo been? Hasn't been getting the sacks. No, that does not mean he's not making an impact, because he absolutely is. So, this one from Dana White's burner. Joel Klatt just said Dan Lanning's going to be the highest. I talked about this quote the other day. The highest paid college football coach, 60% chance of it being at Oregon, 40% chance of it being at LSU. What do you think? So I think that with Lanning's comments of I have zero interest going elsewhere, I don't think he's looking for a leverage play. And as I mentioned earlier this week, I think there's a line of, yeah, I want to be well compensated and paid at the highest level of the sport because it's an incredible financial opportunity for my kids, and it's an incredible opportunity for my kids' kids, frankly. Like, there's a lot of money going around, and certainly I understand wanting to have a part of that when you have a wife and 3 kids. So once you get to a certain level, though, I think you get into just being a competitor. And that's why Rich Eisen didn't even get the question out before Dan Lanning said, I have zero interest in leaving. And he was telling his son, I'm going to be at Oregon as long as I win, which is true. I think he can stay pretty much as long as he wants. Turns out when you win, no place is really that eager to get rid of you. But that was a loaded statement right there with the Brian Kelly and James Franklin situations. There's a lot more to that. But yeah, I don't think that Lanning would come out and make that remark if he and his agent were trying to get another raise out of Oregon. They got one before the year. I think Klatt is just going to wind up being wrong on that one. He's not the highest paid coach in college football right now, and I don't think he should be. I think you have to win a national championship before you do that. So, another one, more of a fun game question since it's a bye week. Since it's a bye week, who cares? Oregon at North Dakota State. If Oregon plays the same game they played against Wisconsin, how much do they win by? Yeah, North Dakota State is the number 1 team in FCS, and they've been the best. They've been the Alabama of the FCS for a long time. It's about who can knock them off every single season. And right now those options are South Dakota State and Tarleton, actually, who's in Southern Utah's league. And I've seen Tarleton. They're really good. And Southern Utah put up 42 points on the road. Unfortunately, a loss. But I think that if Oregon played how they did against Wisconsin, against North Dakota State, yeah, it could be a little bit closer. You know, it's not the Seahawks just took Gray Zabel from North Dakota State in the first round. Like that's a Power 4 program masquerading as an FCS school. That's why they win so much. I also don't want to project the illusion that if North Dakota State jumped into the Big 12, they would just win the Big 12. They might not be at the bottom of the conference, but I think it was last year. Yeah, last year against a Colorado team that was good in the Big 12. They were a 9-win team. They weren't great, but they were good when they had Shedeur and Travis Hunter. North Dakota State played pretty well, went to Colorado, and the Buffs still beat them. So they'd be the middle of the road, I think, Big 12 ACC team, and like fighting to be middle of the road Big 10 as I don't even know if they'd be that, like fighting to be in the middle, like fighting to be bowl eligible with a schedule that they'd be, I think, kind of like Maryland at the moment. So they get you if you're off the mark, but there's still a talent discrepancy there, even at a school with as many talented guys like that. Kimberly sends this one in. Question: how come Lanning is always talked about in jobs, but Ryan Day, you don't really hear his name? Is it because people still look at Oregon as a stepping stone university? No, that is not the reason. The reason you don't hear Ryan Day's name is Ryan Day just won a national championship. And Ryan Day was hired to Ohio State before he was the head coach. So Lanning was the defense coordinator at Georgia, then came to Oregon. But when you were on staff before and get named the head coach, and you're winning at a high level, and you just won a national championship, yeah, if Ohio State hadn't won the national championship last year, you would hear Ryan Day's name a lot more because Ohio State fans would be more willing. They were willing to fire him last year. Some of them, not all of them. Don't want to put them all in the same camp there, but they were willing to get rid of Ryan Day last season because he lost to Michigan again. This is a disaster. And then they go on the run that, of course, they went on. But that's really the differentiating factor is Ryan Day is, I believe, the highest paid coach in all of college football. He's won a national championship. He's been at Ohio State for a long time. He wins a bunch of football games. And by the way, Lanning's name is going to come up less and less as jobs come open in the coming years because here we have gone through another coaching carousel cycle of elite premier college football jobs coming open and Lanning saying, no, I'm good. I'm staying right here because he knows what he has, as I talked about earlier. So that is why Ryan Day's name doesn't come up. The red zone defense. One of the most interesting statistical analyses I have ever done on this show, I think, is coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. You know what? I'm going the hoops route here, even though it was an exhibition back in Game 1. As I record this show, the exhibition Game 2 hasn't yet tipped off, but Nate Biddle, 20 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks. Man, this guy looks awesome. Again, he's going to be a go-to scorer for Oregon all season long. He delivered in a bunch of big moments. You think about the Washington game on the road last season, had a career high, I think it was 39, 36 points, somewhere in that sort of range. He delivered last season for the Ducks, helped him get to the round of 32 for a second straight year. He's going to have to deliver again this year, just like DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Now, right now, Oregon, according to our friends at FanDuel, of course, favored by 6.5 points at Iowa. If you think the Ducks are going to take Phil Parker's gasoline and pour it on the fire, then guess what? maybe Oregon's minus 6.5 is the way to go. If you think Oregon's offense is going to be thwarted by Iowa's defense or Will Stein or both, and you think Hawkeyes are winning outright or at least keeping it close, maybe you want Iowa plus 6.5. Whatever you're feeling, you can go do it over at FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, one of you sent me a question asking for my thoughts on Oregon's red zone defense this year. Now, statistically, Oregon actually has the worst red zone defense in all of college football. That's right. By percentage, teams that have entered the red zone against Oregon have scored every single time. That is tied for 132nd out of 134 FBS teams. There are, I believe, 2 other schools that have also allowed their opponents to score every single time. So if you just looked at that or mentioned it, you'd say, well, that's not very good. And I am sure that Coach Lanning and Coach Lupoi would very much like for that not to be the case. Let me flip this one around a little and point out that Oregon is top 5 in the country, fewest red zone possessions allowed. So it's not like they're working on it a whole heck of a lot. This doesn't give me some grave concern about Oregon's defense. Because how many times, the other thing with this stat that popped into my head was, hey, how many times has Oregon held a team to a field goal? Well, that's happened several times, and no one's missed one against them yet. Now, that means they haven't blocked a field goal yet. Okay, how often does that happen in college football? Not very often. How often do kickers miss? Pretty regularly. As Oregon fans, we know, like, kickers have a tendency to miss at the college level from time to time. So Oregon has given up 13 scores, and no one's missed a field goal yet. There's an element of chance to that. But this is not a reflection of the Ducks just really having underlying issues on defense, or it's a struggle, it's waiting to get exposed. Nope, they haven't held a team to 0 points yet. There's nothing about this defense, aside from the linebackers a little, that concerns me. Because the defensive line is great and deep. The secondary is awesome. They are ahead of schedule. The defensive line is where I expected it to be. The linebackers are what I expected them to be before the year. The secondary, in my view, is ahead of schedule. Brandon Finney is probably the best true freshman corner Oregon has ever had. He is unbelievably good. Thieneman, exactly what I expected him to be. That other safety spot's been locked down by Aaron Flowers. Dude looks great. Ife Obadegwu on the other side, and everybody else that rotates in. Dalen Austin had an interception last week. I think that for Oregon defensively, I feel really good about that side of the ball. But if a team that got into the red zone had doinked one off the upright and Oregon wasn't dead last, like would that make you feel significantly better? It wouldn't change my outlook. Obviously, Oregon in the red zone is not Ohio State. That is, over the last 2 seasons, just generationally good down there. All right, it's an area for improvement. It's not something that gives me a huge level of concern, like, oh my gosh, if they don't figure this out, someone's going to expose it. No, Oregon's defense is just fine. So, here's one. Was Makai Hughes to win the Doak Walker the worst SSA of all time? No, it wasn't. You know, what I've been told on Makai Hughes is that, and it's important to try and filter through this stuff as best you can because it can be difficult to know. It is not coach speak when a coach comes to the microphone and says, yeah, I mean, we like Makai Hughes a lot. We just didn't quite realize how good the freshmen were going to be. And that's not to say they didn't like the freshmen when they brought him to Oregon. That's why they brought him to the Ducks. But even coaches, this is a perfect example of something I talk about a lot, even coaches are not always expecting, especially true freshmen, to just be ready to make the jump right away. Depending on what part of the country you come from, what league you've been playing in high school, the jump from high school to college might be bigger than the jump from college to the NFL. The best example is actually a basketball example, but it can apply there as well. Kel'el Ware, which is a throwback name, he's playing in the NBA, by the way. Never got it going at Oregon for various reasons that I remember talking about, but he was playing against some guys in Arkansas that literally couldn't come close to challenging him. Physically, height-wise, skill-wise, it was a big jump. I think that was part of the reason his career at Oregon was just kind of so-so, is he was taking some time to adjust to that because it's a significantly higher level of competition. You know, the Blazers are seeing that with their first-round pick at center, Young Hansen, who I think can be awesome, fun player to watch, smart, crafty, skilled. Yeah, he's not having as easy of a time as he did in the Chinese Basketball Association because the NBA has just got a lot better guys. But that jump from high school to college, that can just be a huge gap. So anyway, no, like I've gotten worse takes for the SSA before, but yeah, Makai Hughes being named the best running back in all of college football, and then playing a few games, redshirting, and he's going to transfer after this year. Yeah, I mean it's up there. It'd be up there retroactively in the worst SSA Hall of Fame list, but no, it's not the worst one I can remember getting. Because how could you have expected that? Retroactively, sure. Hindsight's 20/20, but. Yeah, I don't think that's the worst one that I've ever gotten there. I'll wrap with this. Forgot to answer this on yesterday's show, which I do sometimes. But that's why I have notes, which sometimes I forget to look at. Fun fact. And I just kind of get ideas and then go. And then I came back after I recorded yesterday and realized, I didn't answer this question. But on the basketball front, one of you and a couple of you were saying that you want some basketball specific shows. When I'm able to do those, 100%, I will work to make that happen throughout the crossover season. But the question that I got from one of you is, why doesn't Oregon put more into basketball? And I don't think that Dana Altman would still be at Oregon if he didn't feel like he had the necessary resources to go out and compete. Oregon still recruits big-time players. You look at Taj Ariza in the class of 2026. They're going after Tyron Stokes, who some services have as the number one overall player. I don't think that the perceived lack of caring for basketball is the same. I think there's some little things, but more than anything, I really do believe this is the case. I don't know that everyone in the Oregon media space will share this opinion, but I really do think that basketball is just not as big of a deal on the West Coast. It just isn't. UCLA is the only school of all the ones up and down that really, really care about basketball. Everyone else, it's a second hit. There are places across the country where that's inverted. I talk about this with Locked On hosts all the time. So like my guy Isaac Shade over at Locked On Tar Heels, who's a stud, one of my favorite guys to work with here at the network, and he does Locked On College Basketball as well. He does that as the Locked On Tar Heels host because he mostly talks about college basketball. We have a new host of the network. You might have seen him on the Locked On Big Ten Squad, newer host this year, Nick Arvin of Locked On Purdue. He's talking about basketball a lot. Why? Because Purdue is a more basketball-crazed fan base than some of the others. Obviously, for Oregon, I see the numbers. I know you guys are more football-centric, which is totally cool. Obviously, I love football. Obviously. I love college basketball just about as much, quite frankly. And so, for me, they're on the same level. But for everybody else, they're not. And I think the only real perception that Oregon fights in that regard of, why doesn't Oregon care about basketball more or anything? I think that there are just not as many fans. You can't argue it's that Dana Altman hasn't built a program that's worth watching. Guys work hard. They play a lot of defense. He's won 20 or more games every single year since he arrived with the Ducks. He hasn't done anything but win. He's the best to ever do it at the University of Oregon. But do they sell out Matthew Knight Arena the same way, percentage-wise, as they do Autzen Stadium? No. No, they don't. And USC, not as big of a basketball school. UCLA is the only one. Cal and Stanford, for however much they do care about athletics, care more about football. Oregon State cares more about football. I don't think they don't care about basketball necessarily. But Washington's like all these play. Washington's the same way. Washington's got a good team and a really good head coach, Danny Sprinkle, by the way. And I know I'm running long, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I don't think that Oregon lacks the resources to put together a team to go and compete for a national championship in basketball. I've seen Dana Altman do it, and last year's squad was really good. They ran into a good Arizona team. They didn't play their best game after a great start. And yeah, there were some other great squads out there. And I don't know that I've seen Oregon put together a basketball roster that's as talented comparatively as what they do for football. So maybe, yeah, like it's not at the exact same level, but I don't think that there's a lack of investment. I think it's just culturally, it's not as big of a thing. Not a big of a thing out west. But Oregon's non-conference slate starts on Tuesday, November 4th, at home against Hawaii, Matthew Knight Arena. Get there. Jackson Shellstad won't play, but Oregon should be fine. You get to see Wei Lin. I might have some thoughts at some point if I have time to put together a bonus show on the scrimmage that they had against Stanford, some more mailbag questions, and then football is back in full swing next week with Iowa. And as I mentioned, I will do my best to get bonus content out there for basketball when games are happening and football is still in season. So, long show today, but boy, it was a lot of fun. I've been your host, Sid from Toy Story. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy Halloween, and go Ducks.